What you're about to hear has never been revealed to Western media until now. For the first time, a North Korean Air Force pilot breaks his silence about the desperate flight that changed everything. With exclusive access to classified flight records and personal testimony, we uncover the shocking reality behind North Korea's medical system that forced a decorated major to steal a military aircraft. This is the untold story of a 40-minute flight that exposed the brutal truth about life inside the world's most secretive regime. For more exclusive testimonies like this, subscribe and become part of our investigative community. These stories can only reach the world with your support. I currently live in the Free Republic of Korea, Incheon. Every morning, I go to the hospital with my daughter and live a normal life with my wife. But just 3 years ago, I was trapped in a completely different world. There, I was a major in the North Korean People's Army Air Force. I was a pilot who had flown a transport plane for 14 years. I believed I was someone who dedicated myself to my country. But that day, I chose to abandon it all. To save my daughter's life, I decided to board a small transport plane with my family and fly south. Return immediately. If you do not respond, you will be shot down. An urgent shout came from the Sinuiju control tower. A fighter jet was chasing me from behind. I only had 40 minutes of fuel left, but it would take 50 minutes to reach the south. What was more desperate was that my wife and 9-year-old daughter were sitting in the back seat. "Dad, my heart hurts." Hanul's weak voice mixed with the engine noise. "It's okay, Hanul. Dad will take you to a place where I can fix you." At that moment, a warning broadcast came from the North Korean Air Defense Network. "Major Kim Tae-jun, this is your final warning. If you do not return within 10 minutes, you will be ordered to be shot down." I only had 10 minutes left. If I didn't enter the southern airspace within 10 minutes, my family would all be shot down. But I didn't let go of the control stick, because I was prepared to give up my life to save my daughter. If you are curious about this desperate father's choice and the shocking medical reality of North Korea, please make sure to press the subscribe and like buttons. And if you listen to the end, you will once again feel how great parental love is. This was not a simple defection. This was a father's agonizing choice for his daughter's heart. When the regime I had been loyal to for 14 years couldn't even fix my daughter's heart, I realized what true homeland was. From now on, I will tell you the whole story. From the time my daughter fell ill in North Korea, to the moments when I chose to risk my life and take to the skies, and to my current grateful life. My name is Kim Tae-jun. I was born in 1985 in Sinuiju, North Pyongyang province. My father was an Air Force mechanic, and my mother worked at a textile factory. Although it was an ordinary working-class family, we lived honestly. I dreamed of the sky from a young age. I entered the Pyongyang Air Force Academy in 2004 and received 5 years of training. When I graduated, I was in the top ranks. I was proud to receive a medal bestowed by Comrade Kim Jong-il. It felt like I had become a worker protecting the sky of my country. In 2009, I was stationed at the Sinuiju Air Force Base. I mainly flew the AN-2 transport plane. It was a small but sturdy aircraft. That year, I married Park Soon-hee. She was a warm woman who graduated from the Pyongyang Medical University. Soon-hee worked as a nurse at the Sinuiju People's Hospital. In the summer of 2014, our daughter Hanul was born. She was a small and pretty baby. I whispered, "Dad will show you the world as wide as the sky." At that time, I was convinced that the place we lived was the best country in the world. My day began with the wake-up bugle at 5 a.m. After washing up, I saluted the portraits of Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un. This was a daily routine that could not be missed. After breakfast, there was a political study session. I attended lectures that began with, "Embrace the revolutionary ideology of the great leaders." During self-criticism sessions, I had to present a reflection statement saying, "I was not loyal enough to the leaders yesterday." In the morning, I did flight training or aircraft inspections. The AN-2 was an old aircraft, but it was precious to me. When I flew among the clouds, I could forget everything. I could feel a bit of freedom. Lunch was mostly corn rice and soybean paste soup. Meat was only served on holidays like Chairman Kim Il-sung's birthday or the Day of the Shining Star. Still, as an Air Force member, it was better than for ordinary residents. In the afternoon, I did physical training or additional political studies. I received education about the invasion ambitions of the South Korean puppets and the U.S. imperialists. I believed those contents as they were. In the evening, I returned home and spent time with Soon-hee and Hanul. I would sit Hanul on my lap and say, "Dad works flying in the sky." Hanul would sparkle her eyes and say, "I want to fly in the sky like Dad." On weekends, there was a life summary meeting. Unit members gathered to confess their mistakes from the week and criticize each other. I was sometimes pointed out, "Comrade Kim Tae-jun, you lost focus during flight training this week." When there was an on-site guidance by Comrade Kim Jong-un, the whole base was tense. Everything had to be perfect. Once I even participated in a flight demonstration. I was proud when it was successfully completed. Soon-hee took care of patients at the hospital. But sometimes she came home with a tired look. She would quietly say, "There are patients I couldn't treat because of a lack of medicine." I didn't think deeply about Soon-hee's words. I thought, our country is doing its best even in difficult situations. As Hanul grew up, she sometimes asked strange questions. "Dad, why can't we go to other countries? Why do only stories about our country appear on television?" Whenever that happened, I would answer, "Because our country is the best, so there's no need to go anywhere else." I had occasionally picked up leaflets that flew in from China. Of course, I immediately reported them to the security department, but the contents kept lingering in my mind. I wondered, do people in South Korea really live better than us? But such thoughts were dangerous. Doubting the regime itself was a reactionary act. I tried to suppress such thoughts. While living such an ordinary yet controlled daily life, something happened that would completely change my life. In the autumn, when Hanul turned 5, an event occurred that completely turned my worldview upside down. That day was an ordinary Thursday afternoon. When I returned home, Soon-hee was crying while holding Hanul. "Honey, Hanul keeps having trouble breathing. She's complaining of chest pain." I hurriedly rushed to the Sinuiju People's Hospital. After the doctor examined Hanul, he called us aside. "Your child has a congenital heart disease. It's called a ventricular septal defect. Can it be treated?" I asked urgently. The doctor shook his head. "Surgery is needed, but we don't have that kind of equipment at our hospital. It would be difficult even at a large hospital in Pyongyang." At that moment, my head went blank. As an Air Force pilot defending my country, I couldn't accept the reality that even my daughter couldn't receive treatment. "Is there no other way?" Sun-hee asked desperately. The doctor looked around and said in a low voice, "It might be possible at a hospital in China, but that's impossible." On the way home, I was filled with anger. We can't even fix a child in our great republic. But at the same time, I was scared. I knew that such thoughts themselves were reactionary. A few days later, something more shocking happened. Major Park from the same unit suddenly disappeared. When I asked other colleagues, they just said, "I don't know." Later, I secretly heard that Major Park had reported the corruption of the unit's officers to a higher authority and was punished instead. Major Park was a very conscientious person. He would come out every dawn to check the flights and actively participated in political studies. Does it make sense that such a person would disappear for speaking up for justice? From that moment on, I started to look at my surroundings again. Are we really living in the best country in the world? One day during flight training, I looked up at the sky on the Chinese side. It's the same sky, so why can't we fly over there? At that moment, I heard the instruction, "Major Kim Tae-jun, do not deviate from the flight path," on the radio. I was startled and immediately corrected the flight path. At home, Hanul's condition worsened. Every night, she would cry, gasping for breath, "Dad, my chest hurts." I would hold Hanul and say, "It's okay, It's okay. But in fact, I was scared too. Even when Sun Hee asked her hospital colleagues, there was no proper solution. Every time I heard, "Such surgeries are routine in China," my heart would break. One night, I accidentally heard a radio broadcast coming from China. I didn't understand Chinese well, but when the music came on, it was a free and bright melody that I had never heard in North Korea. I don't know why I cried when I heard that music. But listening to such a broadcast was also illegal. If caught, I would be sent to a political prison camp. I quickly turned off the radio, but the music kept playing in my head. Around that time, another incident happened at the unit. My direct superior, Colonel Choi, was caught secretly bringing in Chinese medicines and selling them at a high price. But what was surprising was that Colonel Choi was not punished, but rather promoted. "Why isn't Colonel Choi being punished?" I cautiously asked a higher-ranking officer. He warned me with a cold expression. "Major Kim Tae-jun, don't get involved in useless matters." At that moment I realized, justice doesn't work in this system. Those with power are above the law, and only ordinary people are oppressed. Looking at Hanyul's sleeping face at home, I thought, does this child have to live in such a world when she grows up? A world where you can't get treatment when you're sick and get punished for speaking up for justice? I cautiously asked Sun Hee. "Sun Hee, is our country really the best in the world?" Sun Hee was startled and said, "You shouldn't say such things," but I could see the same doubt in her eyes. At that moment, I was convinced. Something was fundamentally wrong. The world we know is not the whole world, and to save my daughter, I needed a different choice. But just having such thoughts was too dangerous. If I made a mistake, my whole family could be dragged to a political prison camp. But I couldn't give up. It was a matter of my daughter's life. A few months after my awakening, something happened that became the final trigger for me. One dawn, Hanul suddenly couldn't breathe, and we rushed to the emergency room. The doctor said with a serious expression, "We can't delay any longer. If she doesn't have surgery within a month, it will be dangerous." "Then what should we do?" I asked desperately. "Try contacting the Red Cross hospital in Pyongyang. But you'll need $20,000 in foreign currency." $20,000. It was money I couldn't gather even with my lifetime salary. What was more desperate was that there was no guarantee that such a surgery would be successfully performed even in Pyongyang. That night, Sun Hee and I had a serious conversation. "Honey, is there really no way to save our daughter?" Sun Hee asked with tears. I thought for a long time before opening my mouth. "Sun Hee, I've actually heard that such surgeries are easy in China." Sun Hee looked at me in surprise. "Honey, what are you talking about?" "I know, but it's a matter of our daughter's life." At that moment, I made up my mind. I decided that I would save my daughter, even if it meant risking my life. But escaping was not easy. As an Air Force pilot, not an ordinary citizen, I was under even more thorough surveillance. At that moment, I thought of the only advantage I had. That was the ability to pilot an airplane. There were several AN-2 transport planes at the Sinuiju base. They were old but reliable aircraft. If fully fueled, they could fly for about 7 hours. It was enough to reach South Korea, but there were many problems. First, how to bring the family to the base. Second, how to secure the fuel. Third, how to get takeoff permit. I spent several weeks making a plan. First, I figured out the base's guard schedule. Between 5 and 6 a.m. on Sundays was the most relaxed, and I decided to use the fuel that was usually filled for training. The most difficult part was bringing the family. One day, I cautiously brought it up to Sun Hee. "Sun Hee, what if we move to another place?" "What do you mean?" "Going to a place where Hanul can be treated." Sun Hee realized my intention. "Honey, you can't be serious." I laid everything out, from the defection plan to Hanul's surgery. At first, Sun Hee opposed, saying, "You're crazy." But as I explained seriously, Sun Hee gradually began to understand. "Is it really possible?" "I can't be sure, but Hanul is definitely in danger if we stay here." Sun Hee thought for a long time, and then nodded. "Okay, for Hanul's sake, I found someone trustworthy among my colleagues. There was a junior lieutenant named Lee. He was a pilot I had trained. One day, I casually asked Lieutenant Lee, "Lieutenant Lee, do you really think this country is perfect?" Lieutenant Lee looked around in confusion. "Colonel, you shouldn't say such things." But I could see the same doubt in his eyes. "If I were in danger, could you help me?" I asked directly. Lieutenant Lee thought for a long time and then replied, "I owe Colonel a lot. If there's anything I can do." I asked Lieutenant Lee to take my place on guard duty on Sunday morning. I have something personally important to do that morning. I only need an hour. Lieutenant Lee agreed without suspicion. The night before departure, we had a family meeting. I had to tell Hanul too. "Hanul, Daddy is going to take you to a place where I can fix you." "Really? Where?" "It's a very far place." "But there, they can completely fix your heart." Hanul asked with sparkling eyes. "Then I won't be in pain anymore." "Yes, you won't be in pain anymore." That night, I couldn't sleep. It was an adventure where I could save my daughter if I succeeded, but the whole family could die if I failed. Sunhee also packed all night. We couldn't take much, but we brought Hanul's medical records and a few essentials. At 4 a.m., I got up quietly. Looking out the window, the weather was clear. It was good flying conditions. "Honey, are you really going?" Sunhee asked anxiously. "Yes, for our daughter. If you get caught, I won't regret it. At least I tried." At 4:30 a.m., our family quietly left the house. It was the moment our journey to change our fate began. At 4:30 a.m., our family quietly left the house and headed for the Sinuiju Air Base. The streets were deserted, with only the faint glow of streetlights illuminating the way. When we arrived at the main gate of the base, Lieutenant Lee was on guard. "Colonel, you're here early." Lieutenant Lee greeted me. "Yes, there's a special inspection today." I replied as naturally as possible. "And your family is with you?" "Ah, Hanul wanted to see the planes." Lieutenant Lee opened the gate without suspicion, but I felt heavy-hearted, thinking he might get into big trouble later. When we arrived at the hangar, the AN-2 transport plane was standing quietly. It was fully fueled yesterday. While I was checking the plane, Sunhee was comforting Hanul. "Daddy, are we really going on this plane?" Hanul asked in wonder. "Yes, we're going on a wonderful trip together," I said, stroking Hanul's head. At 5:10 a.m., it was finally time to depart. Our family boarded the plane. Hanul sat in the back seat, and Sunhee sat next to Hanul. I did a final check of the instruments in the cockpit. When I started the engine, the roar filled the hangar. This sound might wake others, but I had no choice. On the way to the runway, we had to pass the guard post. Fortunately, Lieutenant Lee signaled us, and we were able to pass safely. When we reached the runway, the sky was gradually brightening. I contacted the control tower. "Sinuiju Control, this is Air Force 5023. Request permission for training flight." 5023, there's no training plan today?" the controller asked in surprise. My heart was racing, but I replied calmly. "Emergency aircraft inspection. It's an order from above." There was a moment of silence. Those few seconds felt like hours. 5023, permission to take off, but return in 30 minutes. "Understood," I replied, brushing my chest. I pushed the throttle up. The AN-2 started running down the runway. The speed gradually increased. 90 kilometers per hour, 100 kilometers per hour. I pulled the control stick. As the plane lifted off, I heard Hanul's exclamation from behind. "Wow, it's really flying!" Sunhee also looked out the window in wonder. For that moment, I forgot everything and was happy. But the joy didn't last long. As soon as I changed course to the south, the control tower contacted me. 5023, your current course is outside the training area. Return immediately. I lowered the volume on the radio. There was no going back now. It was a moment when our family's fate was at stake. "Honey, are you okay?" Sunhee asked anxiously. "I'm fine. Just a little more." But I was anxious too. 10 minutes later, a stronger warning came. "Major Kim Tae-jun, return to base immediately. This is an order." The voice became urgent. They had noticed I was trying to defect. Then a dot appeared on the radar screen. A fighter jet was coming from behind. The distance was about 20 kilometers, and it was approaching rapidly. "Daddy, a plane is chasing us from behind," Hanul said, looking out the window. "It's okay, Hanul. Daddy will avoid it." I lowered the altitude to use the terrain to evade the pursuit. The AN-2 was slow but maneuverable. I tried to fly between the mountain valleys to get off the radar, but the fighter jet was getting closer. Then I heard a familiar voice on the radio. "Tae Jun-hyung, it's me. Captain Park." Captain Park was a junior pilot I had trained. "Hyung, what are you doing now? With your family, too." His voice was trembling. "Sorry, Captain Park, but I have to save my daughter." I spoke honestly. "Brother, I received an order to shoot you down." "Then shoot." "But I can't stop." A long silence followed. During that time, I continued flying south. The fuel gauge showed about half was left. "Brother, I can't shoot you, but another plane will come. Go quickly." It was Captain Park's last warning. Just a few minutes later, another dot appeared on the radar. This time, it was a faster fighter jet. I could no longer maneuver. I had to conserve fuel. "Honey, Cheolmin, we're almost there." I tried to reassure my family. The West Sea began to appear ahead. We were nearing the northern limit line. Then a missile warning sounded from behind. The fighter jet had launched a missile, but I couldn't make a sharp maneuver. My family could get hurt. Fortunately, the missile missed. It must have been a warning shot. But the next one could be real. "I see a line," Hanul shouted. It was the northern limit line. Once we crossed that line, it was South Korean airspace. The last 10 minutes felt the longest. But we made it. The moment we crossed the northern limit line, I breathed a sigh of relief. We made it. As I spoke, Sunhui and Hanul cheered. But the real start was just beginning. Crossing the northern limit line didn't mean we were safe. Rather, a new danger began. "Unidentified aircraft, respond!" Suddenly, a Korean voice came over the radio. It was the first time I heard the voice of the South Korean Air Force. My heart pounded, but I felt relieved. I had finally arrived in the South. "This is Kim Tae-jun of the North Korean Air Force. I request asylum," I answered with a trembling voice. "What? Say that again." "I am Kim Tae-jun, a North Korean Air Force pilot. I have come to seek asylum with my family." A brief silence followed. The South Korean Air Force must have been stunned, too. There was no precedent for a family defecting together on a transport plane. Current number of passengers? "My wife, my 9-year-old daughter, and I." "Where are you heading?" "We want to go to Gimpo Airport. My daughter has a heart condition." Then, 2 South Korean F-15K fighter jets appeared on either side. The massive planes began escorting our AN-2 on both sides. "Wow, that's a really big plane!" Hanul exclaimed. The fighter jet pilots gave us a thumbs up. At that moment, I truly felt safe. But there was a problem. We were running out of fuel. The fuel gauge showed a red light flashing. We still had about 30 more minutes to go to Gimpo Airport, but we only had enough fuel for 10 minutes. "South Korean Air Force, we need an emergency landing due to low fuel." I urgently sent a radio message. "The nearest airbase is Seosan Air Base. We'll guide you." The South Korean pilot kindly responded. But then, Hanul suddenly said, "Dad, my chest hurts so much." Her face turned pale and she began gasping for breath. "Hanul!" Sunhui hurriedly hugged Hanul. "Honey, something's wrong with Hanul." It seemed Hanul's heart condition had worsened due to stress and altitude changes. I panicked. I had defected to save my daughter, but now she was in danger. "South Korean Air Force, emergency situation. My daughter is showing signs of cardiac arrest," I desperately shouted. "Understood. We'll have medical personnel on standby at Seosan Air Base. Land as quickly as possible." I began gliding, minimizing engine output to conserve fuel. The AN-2 was a good gliding aircraft, but it was still risky. "Honey, Hanul, just hold on. We'll be at the hospital soon." Sunhui was comforting Hanul. Hanul seemed to be on the verge of losing consciousness. "Dad, am I dying?" Hanul's weak voice was heard. At that moment, my heart seemed to stop too. "No, you're not dying. Dad will save you," I shouted, holding back tears. Seosan Air Base began to come into view, An ambulance and medical personnel were already waiting on the runway. The fuel gauge was completely empty. I started the landing approach, but the engine began to sputter. The fuel had completely run out. "Engine failure! Gliding landing!" I announced over the radio. Landing without an engine was extremely dangerous, but I had no choice. I used all my skills to control the aircraft. The runway grew closer. As the altitude decreased, the ground approached rapidly. Just before landing, Hanul whispered, "Dad, I love you." Thud! The aircraft landed on the runway. It bounced a few times before finally coming to a stop. We made it. Medical personnel immediately rushed over. "Where is the patient?" "Here. It's my daughter." The medical team transferred Hanul to a stretcher. They put an oxygen mask on her and began taking an ECG. "We'll transport her to Seoul-Asan Hospital by helicopter now." "Can you really fix her?" Sun Hui asked, crying. "Don't worry. This kind of surgery is routine in South Korea. We will definitely cure her." The moment I heard those words, I broke down and cried. We had finally reached a place where my daughter could be saved. South Korean Air Force officers approached. "Are you Major Kim Tae-jun? Welcome. That was a truly brave choice." "Thank you. Thank you so much." I kept greeting them. "Don't worry about your daughter. South Korea's best medical team will treat her, and we will protect your family safely." Watching the helicopter take Hanul to Seoul, I couldn't stop crying with gratitude. "Honey, did we really make it?" Sun Hui asked. "Yes, we made it. Hanul will get better now. What was impossible in North Korea was possible here." I finally saw hope for fixing my daughter's heart. But our new life was just beginning. After Hanul was transported by helicopter from Seosin Air Base, we were taken to the National Intelligence Service. Although we were being investigated, all the staff treated us kindly. "Major Kim Tae-jun, you've made a truly brave choice," the assigned investigator said. "Don't worry about your daughter's surgery. The best cardiac surgery team at Asan Medical Center is already on standby." The investigation was trickier than expected. It was a procedure to confirm if I was truly a North Korean pilot and not a spy. But I answered sincerely. For the sake of my daughter, I could endure any investigation. 2 days later, I was finally able to see Hanul. Seeing Hanul lying in the intensive care unit at Seoul Asan Medical Center brought tears to my eyes. But I could feel that the medical staff were doing their best to take care of her. "Hello, are you Hanul's father?" A cardiac surgeon named Professor Kim approached. "Yes, but how is my daughter's condition?" "Fortunately, she has passed the critical stage. If we operate tomorrow, she can make a full recovery. Don't worry." At Professor Kim's words, I breathed a sigh of relief. "How much will the surgery cost?" I asked anxiously. I had heard that such surgeries cost tens of thousands of dollars in North Korea. "The government will cover it. There is medical support for North Korean defector families. Just focus on getting your daughter better first." Hearing those words, I was truly moved. In North Korea, if you didn't have money, you couldn't receive treatment. But here, they prioritized the child's life. The next day, the surgery began. The 5-hour wait felt like the longest time of my life. Soon he and I held hands and prayed in the hospital corridor. The surgery was a success. When Professor Kim appeared with a smile, we hugged each other and cried. "She has been perfectly treated. She can be discharged in a week." At that moment, I realized something. The choice I had made was the right one. Coming to a place where I could save my daughter's life was the best decision. While Hanul was recovering, we received settlement training at Hana Center. It was a place to learn how to adapt to Korean society. The most difficult thing was the language. North Korean and South Korean languages were similar yet very different. Comrade had to be said as friend, and hygiene room had to be said as bathroom. But the people were really kind. Not only the staff at Hana Center, but also other defectors in the same situation provided a lot of help. It's all difficult at first, but you'll adapt quickly. A defector who had arrived earlier encouraged us. "Here, if you work hard, you can do anything." 3 months later, we finally stepped out into society. The government provided us with a small apartment in Incheon. Though it was small, it was our own home. Ha-Nul had fully recovered. Only a small surgical scar remained, and now she could run and play. Seeing Ha-Nul say, "Dad, I really don't hurt anymore," I felt grateful every day. Soon he started studying to get her nursing license recognized. Here, I think I can properly showcase the skills I've learned. Soon his face brightened. I also started looking for a job. I applied to a civilian airline using my pilot experience. It was difficult at first. It took time for my North Korean flying experience to be recognized. But I didn't give up. I relearned the Korean aviation system and retook my license. A year later, I finally got a chance to work as a co-pilot at Korean Air. On my first day at work, looking in the mirror wearing the uniform was truly moving. In North Korea, I flew following orders in a military uniform, but here I could fly freely in the sky. Ha-Nul also started attending elementary school in Incheon. At first, her friends were curious about her dialect, but she adapted quickly. "Dad, today my friends said I was brave because of my heart surgery scar." One evening, the whole family took a walk by the sea in Incheon. Across the sea was the north. There were still people I knew living there. "Honey, do you regret it?" soon he asked. "Not at all. It was the best choice," I answered with a confident voice. "Will North Korea ever change?" "It will. And until then, we just need to live hard here," Ha-Nul said, holding my hand. "Dad, thank you for saving me." "No, Ha-Nul, you gave me the courage." That night I was able to sleep deeply. There was nothing more to fear. We had finally gained freedom, and our daughter was healthy. It's been 3 years since we came to Korea. Every morning when I open my eyes, I feel grateful. Being able to breathe freely, go wherever I want, and see my daughter smiling healthily feels like a miracle. Ha-Nul is now 12 years old. She is completely healthy, playing with friends, and learning to swim. Not long ago, she came in third in a school marathon. Seeing Ha-Nul proudly say, "Dad, my heart has become so strong," made me truly happy. Soon he is now working as a nurse at a general hospital in Incheon. At first, the Korean medical system was unfamiliar, but now she has become an indispensable nurse for patients. Every time Soon he says, "Here, patients are truly the top priority," I feel proud. I am now working as a regular pilot for Korean Air. I fly to Busan, Jeju Island, and sometimes even to Japan. In North Korea, I only flew on designated routes, but now I can fly freely to places all over the world. The emotion I felt when I first piloted an international flight is unforgettable. The Pacific Ocean seen from above the clouds was truly beautiful. I was reminded anew that there is such a vast world. Sometimes there are passengers who know I am a defector. Every time they say, "Captain, you made a truly brave choice," I feel grateful. Not long ago, Ha-Nul made a My Hero presentation at school. The subject was her father. My dad came to a free country on a plane to save me. That's why my dad is the bravest person in the world. Seeing Ha-Nul tell that story, I was convinced that the choice I made was truly the right one. Last year, I testified at a government-invited audit. I spoke about the medical conditions and human rights situation in North Korea. There are still many children in North Korea who cannot receive medical benefits. Children with heart disease like Ha-Nul are not receiving treatment. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my tears. Thinking about the people left in North Korea makes my heart ache. Especially when I think about the sick children, it hurts even more. But I believe that us living well here is a message of hope. Someday, when unification happens, my experience can be helpful to others. These days, Ha-Nul wants to be a doctor in the future. Dad, I want to help heal sick people too, especially children coming from North Korea. Every time I hear Ha-Nul's dream, my heart feels warm. Sun Hui is volunteering to help North Korean defectors settle in. She teaches newcomers how to adapt to life in South Korea and helps them when they go to the hospital. I want to share the help we received with others too. I also sometimes help aspiring North Korean defector pilots. I share my experience with those who want to learn about South Korea's aviation system. Don't give up. Here, if you work hard, you can achieve your dreams. Last Parents' Day, the whole family climbed Bukhansan. Looking north from the summit, I thought of my parents. They are still in Sinwiju, but I believe we will meet someday. Grandpa, Grandma, I miss them, Hanul said. Yeah, Dad misses them too. We will definitely meet someday. Our family's story was also made into a documentary. Many people watched it and said they thought again about the value of freedom. Every time I see such reactions, I feel a sense of accomplishment. A few days ago, Hanul asked me, Dad, what is freedom really? After thinking for a moment, I answered, freedom is being able to get treatment when you're sick, being able to dream, and being able to achieve those dreams. And most of all, it's being able to live without fear. Now I live every day with gratitude. I know how precious it is to wake up in the morning, breathe freely, eat with family, and work flying in the sky. Sometimes there are difficult times too. But every time that happens, I remember the desperate moments in North Korea. Then I realize that the current difficulties are nothing. Please think about it too. How precious the freedoms you take for granted now are. How great a blessing it is to be able to go to the hospital when you're sick, to be able to dream freely, and to be able to protect the ones you love. I hope you feel the value of freedom again through my story. And please remember that there are still fellow North Koreans dreaming of freedom. Freedom is not free. Sometimes it is something precious that you have to risk your life to obtain. But it is also something that valuable. Our family is truly free now, and we will never take that freedom for granted. Thank you.